lithium. Now, I'd like to use lithium as a prescient example here. Lithium is already a bottleneck in the global and domestic supply chains for electric vehicles, or EVs. Today, there is only one operational lithium mine in the entire United States. Most of our lithium is currently imported from countries like Chile and Argentina.
Because as of January, while the average regular gas in the United States price is pretty small, the amount is cheaper than most of the prices that we saw last year. Average price for gas is already on January 13th is nearly the same as the previous week's average, but 4 cents higher than average from 1 month ago. Because according to data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, while the price drop is starkest when you look at the current average compared with peak prices, about a 34% decline since June. When you look back on further and compare current cost with gas price at the same time last year, it's now about 2 cents cheaper. Spot shortages can easily drive up the gas prices locally because of refinery or pipeline shutdowns or just blending issues. But big nationwide swings in the price of gas are almost due to the price of crude oil. And new data from the Energy Information Administration shows that the cost of raw crude oil typically represents more than half of the cost of a gallon of gas. Refining and distribution and tax account for the remainder. Over time, the price of crude oil has just significantly increased with supply and demand, many factors affecting both, but recession, crisis, and higher prices tend to tamp down demand. Gas prices in the pump rarely affect the market day conditions. Instead, they represent costs incurred per week, folks. So what does this mean? Because gas prices are smaller, does it mean that we'll become getting stimulus checks anytime soon? Well, here's my answer to that. First of all, drivers in Hawaii, California, Washington, Nevada, and Alaska are seeing the highest gas prices, and food prices have also increased 0.2%. It marked a slowdown relative to the increases that have been seen for most of the year. Compared with a year ago, it was 11.8%. Versus 6.5% overall for all inflation items in the index. In an interview with CNBC, the CEO of Kroger said the company expects grocery inflation to remain relatively high this year, but to ease as the year progresses. A good growing season for farmers around the world will contribute to easing inflation pressures because eggs have been one of the most categories that have seen the most inflation, with prices up 11% in December, and even in November things were high too. So recently the House did pass a bill to seek lower gas prices by cracking down on alleged price gouging by the energy companies. This Consumer Fuel Price Gouging Prevention Act grants the president authority to issue emergency proclamations and make it illegal to increase gas, energy prices in excessive and exploitative ways. Now many Americans are going to receive about $3,000 from the IRS, and millions of people are urging Democratic lawmakers to pass President Biden's legislative agenda using the budget reconciliation process. Folks, this is your 4th stimulus check update and daily news report. We have a ton of news to cover in today's video, so be sure to stay until the end and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.
This is historic progress, pulling our economy out of the worst crisis in 100 years, as well as other elements of the American Rescue Plan.
Now, according to The Hill, a majority of likely voters in a new poll supports Democrats passing President Biden's $4 trillion agenda using a budget reconciliation process without needing Republican support. The poll found that 62% of those surveyed somewhat or strongly support passing Biden's American Jobs Plan and American Families Plan together, using budget reconciliation. There are considerable differences across party lines, with 86% of Democrats supporting the use of the reconciliation process, 59% of independents supporting it, and only 36% of Republicans supporting it. What are your thoughts on this, everybody? Should Democrats use the budget reconciliation process again? Or should they try to negotiate with Republicans? Tell me your thoughts on this in the comments below. Now folks, we do know this. 68% of those surveyed said they would be somewhat or much more likely to support a lawmaker who votes to spend $400 billion on long-term care for seniors and people with disabilities, even if it's passed on a partisan basis. The White House is trying to jump up support for the $1.2 trillion bipartisan deal, focusing on physical infrastructure like roads and bridges that President Biden and a group of bipartisan senators agreed to last week.
I will note that while the president ran on and won the most votes of any candidate in history in a platform of boosting funding for law enforcement, after Republicans spent decades trying to cut the COPS program, which again is public record, we don't need to undervalue the intelligence of the American people. The president ran on increasing that funding. It's in his budget. It was in
Typically, when you have debt discharge, the IRS treats it as taxable income. With student loan forgiveness, taxes work differently. In March, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan, which included a clause regarding student loan forgiveness, saying that any federal student loans that were discharged between 2021 and 2025 would not be considered taxable income in terms of federal taxes. Now, lawmakers are back in Washington for the predetermined midterm election sprint. Preventing a government shutdown will be the top legislative item for all lawmakers. The political environment has shifted over the past few weeks. This is impacted by a batch of legislative wins for Democrats earlier in the summer and signs the inflation-laden economy is improving. Democrats are now more confident than ever that they can stem expected losses in President Biden's first midterm elections. They are hopeful they can retain a majority in the Senate, while preventing Republicans from gaining a broad majority in the House. Passing a short-term spending bill before a deadline of September 30th at midnight, when the government funding is set to expire, is a top concern for everybody in Congress. The bill will need the support of Republicans in the Senate, and the 60 votes need to pass. Democrats want to demonstrate to voters they can govern responsibly and not allow a damaging shutdown. In the Senate, Democrats will also keep confirming federal judges nominated by Biden, with government funding set to expire at the end of the month. Both chambers are expected to pass some kind of stopgap funding extension in the upcoming weeks to avert the shutdown, and stopgap funding bills are known as Capitol Hill as a continuing resolution. The Senate Appropriations Chair, Patrick Leahy, a Vermont Democrat, is also aiming for a continuing resolution to run until mid-December to allow lawmakers time just to finish the regular appropriation bills. Now, Hawaii Democratic Senator Brian Schatz summed up the to-do list for Senate Democrats when asked recently by CNN when the September work period will look like. He said continuing resolution and judges. Amid concerns that the higher prices will hurt consumer wallets, some state and federal lawmakers are looking at ways to ease that pain at the pump. Mike Thompson, John Larson, and Lauren Underwood introduced the Gas Rebate Act of 2020. We have a ton of news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSI, and SSDI. A ton of news about the fourth stimulus payments are coming in. I have a lot of information that I'm going to share with you guys today in this video, so continue watching. The several lawmakers, everybody in Congress, have discussed new inflation relief checks for the people. So if you reside in states like Minnesota or Massachusetts, well, you may qualify for at least another stimulus check this year. It comes as budgets are being finalized, states are planning to use the budget surpluses for another round of checks. So a lot of good things are happening in Congress, and a lot of stimulus payments can actually be sent out faster than we ever thought in the history of our lives. So as I was saying, it's official. The governor in several states like Minnesota have actually hoped to include a tax rebate in the state's upcoming budget. It comes from the announcements of the state's budget. It's set to go for January 24. And according to the Associated Press, well, the budget will propose indexing state aid for school districts just to help combat inflation. So Waltz has told reporters that I think people are feeling inflation. Even though it might be cooling a little bit, there's a slight sense of urgency among people to get something done. And that's good here. Something should be done because the Governor Waltz's original pitch for the tax rebates has been quite generous for a lot of people. It gives single filers, for instance, a lot of breathing room, a lot of time to just think about what they can do, and now the government has already signed them into a second term.